Welcome back, buongiorno, come stai, to an episode of John Art with JB. This is my second paint stream, working on my second series in my Asimov fan art series. This is my second painting. So just to give you a little bit of background, the first painting was Gal Dornick arriving on Terminus, and this painting will be Beta Durrell on Calgon. So that's my Syd Mead reference, was my palette. The building I'm going to be adding on my right side of my painting. And then if we go down, we'll show you the character progress so far. That's the character progress. And I tend to like to work in layers. Here, I'll just throw that reference up there. And then what I'm going to be doing is just, before I begin, let me just make sure I'm recording here. And I am recording. All right, excellent. It can be taught. So what I'm going to be doing is just using my makeshift palette that I made here. I didn't use the color picker to reference this. I went by eye. I think it's important to sort of try to adhere to traditional painting principles when you're using the computer when it comes to things like picking colors and determining values. For blending edges and whatnot, if you want to leverage the select palette, you have the select tab here with modify, color range, all these different things you can use. I think that's fine. But for fundamental stuff like determining values and color families and whatnot and color harmonies, I think it's important to sort of not use the eyedropper tools crush here. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is just laying in and blocking things in today. And in that vein, what I want to do is go down to my sky layer. And I'm going to show you just how I take advantage of layers here. And I know some artists are not big proponents of using layers, but you can use layers and make an image look perfectly blended if you have a formula that works for you. So I tend to take advantage of select and the select tool up here. And then what I'll do is modify my selection by feathering it. And as I get closer to the viewer, I feather less and less. And I'm also merging layers and, blending in edges at points as if I were working on a traditional oil painting, all the while looking at my painting from about mid distance, occasionally viewing it going out, seeing how everything reads from far away, just like you would again if you were doing a traditional oil painting. And sometimes what you want to do is squint your eyes and blur your vision to see how the different color harmonies and value structures are all relating to each other. How all the shapes in a painting that are determined by the different values are relating to each other. And you generally with value, you want to get that dark, middle, and light, and you want to keep your color palette relatively limited. These are all variations on colors you can get in a Zorn limited palette, right? With the exception of the blue, which I would add a cobalt blue if I were doing this traditionally. I would first prime my canvas. I would do a peach colored gesso or an ochre colored gesso. I would sand it down, and then I would lay in my underdrawing, which if we just minimize, which you can kind of see here, right? And at that point, what I would do is start blocking the big shapes using, a Zorn palette. And, some painters will use a gray line. I've kind of started doing that, being more cognizant of that as I work digitally. But to be honest, when I was doing oil paintings a lot last year during the lockdown, I didn't really use a gray line. I just kind of would look at my work in black and white occasionally, take a photo of it and switch it to black and white and see how the values were working and course correct as needed at that point. But a gray line would make things easier, right? However you want to determine if your values are working, whether you're mirror imaging your work and looking at it in black and white, or whether you're going off of a gray line right away, that's something you can do. And basically a gray line, if we open this up here, is if you were doing a regular palette, you would have your Zorn colors and then you would have your variations on each color. And then what you would do is if you were doing a face, for instance, you would mix flesh using your Zorn colors. And then the lightest point on your face would correspond to the lightest point in a black and white monochromatic grid or column, right? So you have your colors, your columns, and you're going down the line for each. So you have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 colors here across, and then or basically 1, 2, 3 colors here, and then you have colors here, and you're doing one color, and then you can do a color over here, and then go down the line, and a color over here and go down the line. So you have several variations on a light, several variations on a middle, and several variations on dark, right? And in my previous video, I explained how Photoshop painting principles are designed off, Photoshop was designed with traditional painting principles in mind, basically. And I'm kind of rambling this video. So without further ado, let me get going here. So first things first, I want to start with a warm neutral. I'm going to go in and just lay in this color down here, or actually rather lay in this color. And I'm going to start just a regular brush. And you can see how right away my lens flare is, oh, hold on. I need to put that on a separate layer here. Let's do this sky. Let's go. We'll do building. We got some relaxing Mario music in the background. And I'm just going in and laying in my various building elements. Zoom out here. One other thing you can do is utilize that underdrawing to your fullest, right? You can, like in a traditional painting, you would literally be blocking in things and making the underdrawing a core part of the value structure. So I definitely want to do that at a certain point. I rather like that. I think it looks pretty sweet. What I may end up doing is editing this line here on my sky a little bit. Let's do this. Let's make we'll feather this out by about 4 pixels. I'm going to use my path tool here. The sky layer for a minute here. Or get rid of my sky reference layer rather. And what I want to do is really come in here and make a selection. We'll call this right building. And then what we'll do is select, modify, feather. And we're going to feather this thing out 4 pixels. All right. Now that we have that, what I want to do is I want to come in and on my sky layer, expand this. I want to raise my opacity to 90% here. And I'm just experimenting with layer order right now. I could come back, repaint this. Flat this all in, one specific color. I rather like that. So Command D, let's save. Let's go up to my underdrawing here. And I believe what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut out this building. So I'm going to make a new path just so I don't overwrite what I'm doing. I'm going to take my lasso tool here. And I'm going to do a layer via cut. So we'll do layer new. Layer by cut. Then I'm going to take this. And I'm just simply going to move it down. So I can kind of see what's going on still. That. Let's go to my sky layer. So I just want to add to this selection a little bit. Let's go here. Again, to my lasso tool, Shift. Or rather, right. So I rather like that. So now what I want to do is select, modify, feather 4, delete. Then I want to go down here. I want to recolor this area in. not going to worry too much about this action down here. And then what I'm going to do is, while this is still going on, what I'm going to do is delete this, go back up to my sketch background here, and I'm going to make a new layer above my building, between my building and sky layer here. I'm going to call this building underdrawing. Then I'm going to go up to my sketch background. And again, this is just taking advantage of the tools, right? It's not cheating. If your eye can perceive it, really, it's not so much cheating at that point. All right. So what I'd like to do now is do maybe a layer via copy. So I have a complete version of this underdrawing. So I'm going to do layer, new, layer via copy. And then I'm going to delete my underdrawing so that I just have this, right? And I'm going to move this down here. And I'm just going to actually delete this layer. So now I have my underdrawing and I have my building, right? And what I want to do really is just have these be on one layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to merge these. And then if I wanted to, towards the end of this rendering process here, I could merge my sky and my building and, you know, apply, you know, go over this with a mixer brush to simulate a painted edge. Or again, I could go to select, modify, feather, and just as I'm painting, feather that selection out, which I have right here. I can actually go in here, select, modify, feather, 4 pixels. And this will give me a really soft edge if I'm going in with like a 0 hardness, right? At this point, what I want to do is go back up to my reference, turn that on so I can see my palette. And again, there's a layering and a stacking here and also a texturizing. I'm not going to worry about texture quite yet. What I want to do is I just want to start blocking in some specific colors here. The first thing I want to do is come in. And you can see that basically what's going on. If we lower the opacity on this, I'm getting sort of a similar, maybe a little bit of a brighter sort of value scheme, but nothing crazy. Now, bear in mind, I am going to mix these seams in here to get a lot of these details. And then, of course, I can go in with some florals, go with some floral brushes there. Right now, I'm just blocking everything in. I want to make sure I get the block end down. Not the biggest fan of that. Let's go with this. And again, it's just a sort of a push and pull. Let's start with that. I'm gonna have to paint over these guys. So I accidentally merged them. Let's do that. Let's paint over these guys right now. And at this point, maybe we'll go to a different brush. Something with more of a brush, paintbrushy type of feel to it, like a chalk, or even a chalk or a pastel brush. I typically like to use these particular brushes up here, these 50 and 60. They got a nice sort of textured feel to them. Go here. I rather like that. And I'm not going to worry about getting seams and whatnot down. I can always repaint a lot of this action. I don't mind going with a green shadow down here. There's more blue in the shadow in the reference, but that's okay. I can actually switch this to a blue key if I wanted to. You're not going for perfection here. What you're going for is an impression right now. And it's the same idea when you're painting faces. Having these shadows kind of be blue, having my warms really pop, right? And you can see how I'm sort of, it's already shifting the character of my image here. I'm going to clean that up later on. And again, because I have this all feathered to smithereens, I'm not going to get that hard edge. I'm going to get more of a painterly edge. I'm going to step save this. And I'm glad that you guys are able to join me today. On this beautiful Thursday. I have my class, my online class tonight. Very much looking forward to seeing what my students have done. They're a great group of students who have been with me for several years now. And I really appreciate the privilege of being able to teach them, share what I know with them, and hopefully that takes them places, right? Fantastic places. I want to start varying this up a little bit. And again, this is this can be kind of turgid at points, like you're going through and you're sort of doing a lot of trial and error, experimenting. That's the nature of digital. You know, you try to get away from it by having a concise palette, right? But at the end of the day, you're still going to have those considerations. So I'm going to play this up a little bit. I'm going to heighten the contrast in here a little bit. Again, I don't care about my values being like perfect, quote unquote, right? I'm not, that doesn't really concern me. Oh, that mark kind of concerns me. I hope you guys enjoy a relaxing Nintendo music. I certainly do. And this is my channel, so Lord of the Flies style, we're going to be listening to relaxing Nintendo music. Here, and just clarify some of the forms in here, some of the shape language. I want to, at this point, maybe start working in some other colors. We can also take advantage of opacity, right? We'll work some more blues in here. This structure, it's all about warm and cool. I'm actually, you know what I need to do is actually just get rid of that, raise the temperature just a little bit. Let's see what I'm doing here. Trying to get some of these texturized marks. And I rather like that, right? But one thing we might want to do is, again, lower the saturation here. And then maybe bring some more of this cream in here. And again, these are just block-ins that I'm doing. I'm not so much concerned with getting it perfect. I'm going to go in with a mixing brush and really just work these edges. You know, I'm also upping the contrast a little bit. That's actually a mark from previous. I wasn't actually, I can go in here at this point and sort of really go to town on some of these forms. And you can see I can't manipulate the hardness with this particular brush, but it just affords me a lot of flexibility. I'm just going to Command S, step save. I'm going to sort of mess around here and make some more arbitrary marks. You'll notice I changed the orientation on my brush quite a bit. I take advantage of this brush settings palette quite a bit. And again, I know that there are other artists that they tell you not to get hung up on brushes, and to a degree that's true. I mean, again, I will maintain that you really should know traditional painting principles and spent several years training traditionally. I think before you really make a jump into digital, I think it's very beneficial, because once you do that, you can kind of, what happens is when you train traditionally for several years, you get the fundamental painting principles down, and you're able to translate that into a digital space once you've gotten a handle on the software, which is another whole component of painting digitally, is learning the software, right? That's sort of the more software, frankly, is the easy part. The hard part is the fundamentals. But once you understand those fundamentals again, and you understand why Photoshop is design the way it is with this gray line, right, built in to simulate a traditional painting palette. I'll cancel that. I need to do that. Then you know how to leverage your tools more effectively. And again, the main things you want to be doing, you don't want to be color picking, like you don't want to be doing this and this and trying to copy the values that way. No, you know, you don't want to be doing that. What you want to be doing is you want to be applying traditional painting principles with the assumption you're working off of a limited palette, making variations of certain color harmonies within that palette that are going to translate into values that are accurate to your reference or accurate to, you know, the sort of image that you want to convey, right? The picture you want to convey, because it really is all about your values at the end of the day. You want to keep that in mind. You want to be looking at your image from far out as you're going through, right? You want to see how your edges are working together. You want to be aware of those edges. So if I were to take this off, it's probably not going to be quite as blended as I'd like, but it's going to be getting there. So let's see. Let's just take these edges off for a moment. Command D. All right. So yeah, I mean, it's still quite a hard edge, but not nearly as hard as it would be if I wasn't feathering. So I can go back in here, select, and then you can also apply. I find another, again, and if you know what you're doing, if you know what you're trying to go for, you can take advantage of certain filters. Like there is a render or a blur gallery. Then there's something called a radial blur or a depth of field blur, which helps you simulate that distance. And I find that's a very effective tool if you're going to work in layers if you have a client. Odds are you want to work in layers if you have a client, because they're going to require modifications, especially if they know you're working digital. They're going to want, there's going to be several rounds of modifications, most likely, just in my experience. Oh, nope, Seer, we don't want help. Oh, man. So yeah, so that's sort of how you want to work this. Let me just put my glasses on here. It's hot out, but it's cold down in my basement right now. So I have the space heater cranked up and a hoodie on. But later on when I go for my jog, I'm definitely going to throw this hoodie off and enjoy the sun on my face. Get some vitamin C, right? That's the other drawback. That's the one thing about digital that I really can't, that drives me a little nuts, is that you kind of need to be in a sort of almost antiseptic, sterile environment. I'd be curious to know from subscribers. And by the way, thank you everybody who is subscribed to my channel. What sort of if you work digitally, do you actually work in by a window, or do you have like some sort of access to the outside world? My Mario music went off. Hold on one second. We're going to cut this fairly soon just because I don't want to go over. Probably around another 10 minutes or so, we'll cut this. I'm just blocking things in, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, right, on the second piece here. So the next video I do will most likely be a traditional art tutorial. But this was sort of a little jelly bean draw stream, if you will. Since a week or so ago, I was remiss in putting out a video at the appropriately scheduled time. At this point, I can use the color pickers. Once I have it down, I feel more confident in my decisions at that point, right? But it's also about keeping your chops up, right? Like, so if you're gonna, what is this? It's my lens flare. Yeah, I want to get that out the way. All right, at this point, let's do this. Oh wait, yeah. 629. Let's we want to have your opacity generally, like a workhorse opacity is a good sort of workhorse opacity is around 86. Let's go to some red. I see a lot of cinnamon in these darks. So again, some warm and cool. And we'll select And you can see that feathering that selection is of a great benefit, because if I zoom in here, you can see how it goes past that edge, right? And it simulates sort of a blurred edge. I'm gonna have to go in and actually probably at some point merge these and then clean that edge up, but this just affords me flexibility while I'm making my scene. And also with landscape, it helps you break down the landscape into background, middle ground, and foreground, frankly. So my middle ground is going to be sort of a really thin strip going across there. Because they're on like a raised patio and almost like a town square type deal. Kind of like that. Save that. And there's also some haze coming in after the fact here too. That's fine. You want to throw in some haze? Throw in some haze, right? Also, feel free to smash that like button or feel free to dislike it, frankly. Dislikes help me too. Either way, I'd rather have dislikes than no reaction at all. I'm not just being totally honest. Like, just dislike that video if it helps. It only helps me. It'll definitely boost me in the algorithm. God knows I need all the algorithm boosting I can get. And I'm just going in here and really coming in and trying to figure out, just explore, treat this as an exploration. Like that. I love how I'm able to visualize things so easily in the digital space. Like I can create this lighting effect right away, right? And then in the same token, I have my character all done. So I can kind of see, okay, how is this going to work? She's probably going to have some bounce light, rim light around this edge here, right? See how that's working synergistically. And I can see how these values are playing off of her, her whatchamacallit, her face. And then I can also see, like, basically what still needs to be drawn in here. So basically that's that. I mean, this is basically the sort of basic block in. I have these dark strokes here, which I'm going to mix in and create my my block in. One more thing I can do for this block in, this particular block in, I can come in and I can do one of these guys. And we'll just let's just raise the opacity up here. I rather like that. I think going in here is going to continue to find some of these forms. It doesn't have to be an exact duplicate of the Syd Mead structure. In fact, I don't want it to be. I want it to be my own thing. I don't want to be swiping off this guy. You know what I mean? I don't want to be like, oh yeah, this is mine, but it actually was done by Syd Mead. I want to take inspiration from Syd and sort of try to make it my own, right? And that's also the purpose, frankly, of any kind of master study. You should be like trying to get into the artist's head, and you want to give the artist credit where it's due. So yeah, so this piece of reference, I should say, was done by the great Syd Mead, and I owe him a great debt. I actually have done some videos on him. He's one of the artists I evangelize on this channel a lot, and for good reason. He was one of the best minds, artistic minds of the 20th century, in my opinion, when it comes to just envisioning what humanity would be like in the future and really striving for a positive, optimistic vision and sharing that vision with people. And I think it really helped really trying to make the world a better place, right, through his art. I think he definitely consciously was aware of that. I mean, he was obviously, illustration was his profession. He was trying to make a living. But I think that, if you asked him, like, what your conceptions of the future, he would kind of probably err on the side of optimism. Just a brilliant mind. Passed away right before 2020, so he didn't miss much. At this point, I don't want to zoom in too much. I'm already probably zoomed in too much into this. But I'm just kind of going in here and trying to find just forms that I can sort of cut out here. And I don't want to overwork this. I actually rather like this the way it is. I might want to go in and just, come in here. Do one of these. Because there's some vegetation here. Okay, I imagine there's multiple levels to this thing and multiple promenades, and there's an area where people can maybe, take a walk on a specific section of the roof. There we go. Save that. So let me just zoom out. Let's look at my work at actual size. It won't zoom out that much, actually. Actually, it zooms in. And that's it at actual size. So we'll look at it without the reference thus far. And then we'll cut this video for today. So that's it without the reference. And then with the underdrawing, that's it with the underdrawing. So that's my Syd Mead sort of love letter, throwing in some of his forms into this piece of Isaac Asimov Foundation fan art. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I know it was a little bit of a slow ramble in the beginning of the video, but I hope that you did. If you stuck with me, I hope you definitely learned a thing or two about digital painting, and I'll be putting up more traditional art tutorials in the coming weeks. So thanks again, guys. Until next time, ciao, arrivederci, and have a great day.